Greetings and welcome to the introduction to astronomy. In this week's Astronomy of Other Cultures, we continue our work on Muslim astronomy and are going to talk about Ya'Qub ibn Tariq and what his work was in astronomy. Now, Ya'Qub ibn Tariq died in 796. And as you'll see with a lot of these, we don't have a lot of details of them. So we don't necessarily know exactly when he was born. And we'll also see that a lot of their works, like many of the Greek astronomers, have been destroyed. So we tend to rely on what fragments do survive and references to people. We do know that he lived in Baghdad and has some of the very earliest surviving work by an Islamic astronomer that describes the sky. So there likely was other work before his, but we don't necessarily have that left. Many works were destroyed over time and just never survived. Of course, compared to today, when things survive very easily, in single books or even multiple copies of a book, if all of them are destroyed, that knowledge was gone. And what he did was to develop his work based on the works from Greece, India, and Persia, and translated those into Arabic. Now, one of the things that he worked on was what is called cosmography. And that is determining the size of the celestial objects, how big they are. Now, when they look at this, one of the things was, again, the early estimates, and they really overestimated a lot of the sizes relative to Earth. Earth being underestimated in terms of vastly underestimated in terms of size. But some of the numbers given by Ya'Qub ibn Tariq were actually not too bad for measuring things like the size and distance of our moon from Earth. So some things were actually relatively accurate. And you remember with what equipment we had to work with back here 1500 years ago, that was actually pretty good. Now, one other thing he worked on was what is called Lunar Visibility Theory. Now, this is very important because you're predicting the visibility of the crescent moon. Now, wonder why that is so important. But here we see a very thin crescent moon. Well, that starts the beginning of the new month in a lunar calendar, that when you first see the crescent moon in the sky in the evening, that is the start of the new month. And you had to be able to predict that because you wouldn't necessarily always be able to see it. If you didn't have a clear day, you might end up having your month off a little bit. So being able to predict that visibility, when that crescent moon would be visible, and being able to do that reliably so that people could depend on that in terms of using it for a calendar, when that very first thin crescent moon would be visible in the western sky just after sunset, knowing that the new month was then starting. So those are a few of the things that Ya'Qub ibn Tariq had done. And let's go ahead and finish up our work here with our summary. And what we've looked at this time was we talked about Ya'Qub ibn Tariq, who lived in the 8th century and used work from Greek, Indian, and Persian astronomy and translated a lot of that into Arabic. He also developed a lunar visibility theory that helped predict the start of the new month. So that concludes this discussion on Ya'Qub ibn Tariq. We'll be back again next week for another topic in Muslim astronomy. So until then, have a great day, everyone, and I will see you in class.